In 1994, this incredible book came out, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. I read this book in 2 days and I was completely smitten by it.
The beginning of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil is exactly what I saw as I arrived in Savannah for the first time. It was a serene town, off the beaten track. And the people there couldn't have cared less about what was going on in the outside world. I thought that Savannah has a welcoming frame of mind for very strange and wonderful people.
I met this guy who was playing his guitar in one of the squares, would sing to people walking by, and then he said, you know, it's like in the dirt here, like the vibration of Savannah. I felt that when I was there, and I feel that working on this show.
The story is many things. It is a murder mystery and a snapshot of an American city in the South that's in transformation.
It's one of the more eccentric places that you could ever go to, and there's a lot of secrets that sometimes mask the problems that the city has. It's really segregated. I certainly was fascinated in terms of how to tell this story.
Strangely, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil is the second musical I've written that is a true crime story set in Georgia. I think one of the things I love the most about this piece is how joyful it is. It's a very joyful show that's about some very serious things.
I hear you're writing a book. Summer Tanager. Every year they return to our beautiful Bonaventure Cemetery because they know where the fun's at.
The story of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil is complex. We're weaving all of these multitude of characters and stories into one place in one time and telling a story of our history and also where we want to go and see change in the future.
Specific! Set yourself to soaking up the atmosphere.
The specific challenge of this piece is that it wants to encapsulate a whole world within this one town. Every subculture within Savannah we're trying to sort of represent in some way. The opportunity that presented was to give all of those different groups their own musical language.
It's a very organic world down there, and yet there's this kind of high class element, this high society element who live in this kind of strangely, slightly separate world. My job is to sort of find those key elements, build that world into a picture that reads on stage, that kind of makes sense of what these different people and how they kind of interact with each other and their different worlds and how they kind of collide.
That's my cue.
The themes in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, as told by John Berendt, race and class. We're still dealing with every single one of those things today. The process of taking this work of art and bringing it to the stage and making it relevant to today's audience and maybe even inspiring, that's the heart of it for me. That's the art of it for me.
If you're wearing a big hot monkey on your back, just shed it.
It's really about wrangling a rather long novel and an entire city into a 2-hour musical. Definitely the most challenging adaptation I've ever had to do.
We're working with a stellar cast who are the best in the business, but we really are allowing this to be a process of creativity. It's a time to play, really, is what this time is.
Now y'all understand why you came. I'm gonna tell you about my name. It starts with the one, the only, the first and last of a kind. It's not A Lady Shipley, honey, it's B if you don't mind, cause I'm a lady.
I knew that with this show, there was going to be this really exciting creative energy. It's really been great watching the show come to life.
The show is not the novel. It's strayed far from its source material whilst remaining true to it, and the characters, they take on a further iteration here and a further life.
Because Savannah is so steeped in its traditions, it came to me, why this show, why now? Because the musical Midnight in the Garden talks about is the juxtaposition of inclusion and exclusion.
How about gotta change the scenery.
What I think Taylor and I most wanted to write about was what happens if you try and make a party that everyone's invited to? How do we build that world? How do we tell that story?
Welcome to Mercer House, the envy of house-proud Savannah. Built by the great-great-grandfather of Johnny Mercer himself. In 101
I think that's the frame we put around this iconic novel in order for us to see a way to tell it now.
sad house.
I was a pretty young little queer kid growing up where there wasn't access to queer culture. So suddenly this massively queer thing showed up. It was such an American novel and such a queer novel at the same time. I didn't understand how those two things could go together. I don't think I would have thought of America as a queer person had I not read this book.
I will mend, I'll restore you bright enough.
I think it's actually a good time for the show. Somehow it sits right in the center of many conversations that we're having in the world, and it makes for a very entertaining and moving event.
And in this space, when the ball starts to spin.
Even in a case where we have this unique piece of material, we're not just standing up on the stage and reading the book.
I think that we have chosen masterful storytellers.
It's invigorating to see. That's what, to me, is the exciting part of creating a new musical. It's like a ball of clay, and each time you do one of these things, it gets a little more shape, and then onward to Broadway.
To deny your displace, you've got space in this space, and you can't take over anymore. Be just a little loud.
One of the most interesting things about the musical is how change comes about. Communities coming together to share a space like Savannah, and how coexistence and collaboration can happen and inspire. I think it's something that all of us on the creative team have been excited to try to pull through the Spanish moss of the story.
I mean, the first thing anyone does in the show is offer you a drink. It wants to be an intimate relationship between the company and the audience. So in that respect, I wanted to feel like an entertaining evening of sharing stories, some of which end in tragedy, others end in triumph.
I didn't know how much bringing this story to life would impact me and how much I see myself in these characters. I'm really realizing that it takes a community beyond just the creative team to every single person in the room. I'm really thankful for the support that we have from every layer of this production to make it possible.
It's been a long time of pulling this show together, but the challenge and the joy of it is to find all of these different languages within this one city, but still add up to one big musical statement.